Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read during the month of November. So I'll be going through a brief synopsis for each book, what I rated each book, the formats that I read each book in, and who I would recommend each of these books to. As always, I'm going to first give you a brief overview of what my reading looked like this month. So I ended up reading 7 books total, and my average Storygraph rating was 4.39 stars. Although I didn't read as many books as I originally wanted to in November, I did read some pretty amazing, good quality books. So I'm really excited to share them all with you. The first book that I have written down is Part of Your World, and I read this on my Kindle. This book follows Alexis Montgomery and Daniel Grant. So Alexis is basically going to inherit her family's hospital chain, and everyone in her family is a famous doctor, including herself. However, lately she's been doubting whether this is really what she wants to do with the rest of her life. She understands that there are so many people she can help with her family's legacy, but she doesn't like any of the people in her life because they're all very toxic, and this includes her family. She also doesn't feel completely fulfilled by the work that she would be doing if she were to take on her family's hospital chain. This all changes when she is driving through a small town and she accidentally drives into a ditch. Daniel ends up saving her from this ditch, and then they see each other later at a bar, and Alexis ends up having a one-night stand with Daniel as the result of a bet. Alexis and Daniel both want to continue a relationship from there, but Alexis has just gotten out of a very toxic and abusive relationship, and her parents are still pressuring her to get back together with this ex because he happens to be another millionaire doctor, and they want Alexis to be with someone of his status. Daniel, on the other hand, is a small town bed and breakfast owner, and he is also a carpenter, and Alexis knows that her family will not approve of him. Even though she is literally a full-grown adult, her family's wishes still play a huge role in her life because of their medical legacy. Also, the small town that Daniel lives in is hours away, so Alexis always has to drive 4 hours to see him. Alexis doesn't allow Daniel to drive to come see her because she doesn't want anyone in her life to find out about Daniel. Everyone she knows is a huge gossip, and she knows that if her parents ended up finding out about Daniel, they would literally tear him apart until he wants nothing to do with her. Anyway, every time Alexis goes to see Daniel, she notices that his small town doesn't have a hospital. So every time someone in this town gets hurt, their options are to either drive for over an hour to the nearest city or just deal with it themselves. And more often than not, they just try to treat themselves, which is horrifying to Alexis because from a medical standpoint, this is very risky. So every time Alexis is in town, she treats patients for free, and everyone in this town really loves her and they love her relationship with Daniel. However, Alexis thinks that her relationship with him is not sustainable in the long term because she can't introduce him to her parents or even let him come see her. There's also a side plot with her ex that I won't go into too much detail about because I feel like it might spoil some things, but that also got in the way of her relationship with Daniel. Daniel, on the other hand, basically worships Alexis and thinks that she is way too smart and talented for him. He takes such good care of Alexis, and he is exactly what I picture a golden retriever boyfriend to be like. He is just so sweet and puts Alexis first no matter what. I rated this book 5 stars because it was incredible. I loved how Daniel treated Alexis like the queen that she is, and I love how topics like mental health and abuse were handled. I especially loved the ending of this book because Alexis resolves all of her conflicts in a very creative way, and I think it was the best possible outcome given her circumstances. Everyone got what they wanted, and Alexis was able to help a lot of people in the process. Overall, if you like contemporary romances, I think this is a must-read because it is just so good. Next, I read Partners in Crime on my Kindle while listening to the audiobook at the same time. This book follows Naveen and Mira. So Naveen is a lawyer and Mira is an accountant. Naveen and Mira were both matched through a matchmaker, which is actually very common in Indian culture, but unfortunately their relationship doesn't work out and they both go their separate ways. A while later, when Mira's aunt dies, it's revealed that Naveen is Mira's aunt's lawyer, and because of that, Mira and Naveen cross paths again as Naveen gives Mira her inheritance from her aunt. However, Mira has a really dark past, and as she is on her way out of Naveen's office, she gets kidnapped from some people people who did not like her father. When Naveen tries to help, he is also taken captive, so the majority of the book is just them being kidnapped together and getting sent on this huge jewelry heist. The premise was incredible, the cover is gorgeous, and Alicia Rai has also written one of my 5-star reads, so I had really high hopes for this book, but unfortunately, the execution just fell a little flat for me, so I just rated this book 3.75 stars. I didn't really feel any natural chemistry between Mira and Naveen. I definitely think they had some unresolved things to talk about, but there weren't really a lot of cute moments between the two of them, so it was hard for me to root for their relationship. I think a huge issue is that the premise of this book is very well suited for a dark romance, but this book is just a typical contemporary romance, if not a rom-com. So the tone was just very weird and it didn't really match the plot of the book. I think if the plot interests you, there are some dark romances out there that have a similar plot. I haven't personally read any yet, but I know that Still Beating is one that a lot of people really seem to like. After that, I read Dirty Letters on Kindle Unlimited. This book follows Luca and Griffin. Luca and Griffin have been pen pals since their childhood, and as they got older, their letters have gone from just being sweet to being spicy, if you know what I mean. After Luca and Griffin stop writing to each other for a while, they rekindle their pen pal relationship and they forgive each other for some misunderstandings. Luca also asks to meet Griffin in real life, but he responds saying that he doesn't think they should meet. He asks Luca to just trust him on this, and he doesn't really say anything more about this, which causes Luca to become very curious and track him down. When she does this, she finds out a lot of really shocking information about Griffin. For some background on Luca, after something really traumatizing happens to her, she has dealt with a lot of mental health struggles and she finds it very difficult to leave her house. She has been in therapy for a while now, and she has a very close relationship with her therapist, who is now half retired and spends his time either bird watching or helping Luca. Anyway, this book was bad and I rated it 3 stars. I literally don't even know why I picked this book up because all of the reviews are terrible and I've never heard anyone say that they like it. I just thought it would be a quick, decent read, but it was really bad. The only reason why it's not 2 stars or less is because I really respect Luca for working through her mental health struggles. So as for why I strongly dislike this book, I just found it too weird and too strange. Luca literally shows up to Griffin's place of residence after she finds out his true identity, and she brings her therapist along with her on this long road trip, and almost every other thing that happens in this book is just even more unhinged than that. I literally would not recommend this book to anyone. If you want to read a good pen pal romance, I highly recommend Punk 57 and Dear Erin. Then I read Twisted Hate on Kindle Unlimited. This is the 3rd book in the Twisted series and it follows Josh and Jules. If you want to hear my thoughts on the first 2 books in the series, check out my reading wrap-up video from last month. Anyway, Josh is an ER doctor and he is also Ava's brother, and Ava was one of the main characters in the first book. Jules is finishing up law school and she is also one of Ava's best friends, so we get the best friend's brother trope in this book. Josh has always hated Jules because he thinks that she is a terrible influence on Ava since they're always getting into trouble together. Jules has also hated Josh because she thinks that he is super pretentious. After they have a sexual encounter in this book, they realize that there is a lot of chemistry and tension between them, so they decide to enter into a friends with benefits situation, except they both hate each other, so it's more like enemies with benefits. While this is going on, Jules is being blackmailed by someone from her past, and she has to violate Josh's trust in order to appease her blackmailer, which is a huge deal because Josh has major trust issues as a result of one of the plot twists from the first book in the series. This leads to another huge plot twist in this book, and it was incredible. I rated this book 4.75 stars because I adored the banter and the animosity between Josh and Jules. I felt like the main conflict between Josh and Jules could have been handled slightly differently, which is why I didn't give this book 5 stars, but I didn't think it was horrible. I know a lot of people absolutely despise the main conflict, but this author writes very morally gray heroes, and I feel like if you don't like that, then obviously you're not going to like the main conflict in this story. Josh is definitely a lot more laid back than this author's other morally gray heroes, so I feel like a lot of people forget that he is supposed to be morally gray, and that's probably why they get upset when Josh does something very dark. So if you do choose to read this, just remember that Josh is supposed to be morally gray, just like all the other heroes in this series. Overall, I highly recommend the Twisted series because it is definitely one of the best series I've ever read. The next book I read is Twisted Lies, also on Kindle Unlimited. This is the last book in the Twisted series, and it follows Christian and Stella. Christian is a billionaire CEO of a Fortune 500 security company, and Stella is a fashion blogger. We've met Stella and Christian right from the start of the series, and I have always been intrigued by their story, so I had really high hopes going into this book, but I was not disappointed. Stella lives in an apartment building that Christian owns, and from the last book in the series, we know that Christian has reduced Stella's rent by a large amount because Stella can't afford to live in this building. He has reduced it so much that it literally does not make any financial sense for him, but he's a billionaire, so I guess he can take the hit. Anyway, we're still not sure why Christian has done this for Stella and why he seems to be fascinated with her. We can definitely tell that it goes a lot deeper than just a physical attraction, and this does not get explained until the very end of the book, but I loved the anticipation. Christian's mysterious past also gets revealed at the very end of this book, and it was just so satisfying after 4 books of just wondering what Christian has been up to. Meanwhile, Stella has just gotten fired from her job at a fashion magazine, so she's trying to make a full-time income from just her blog, but she can't get the sponsorships that she really wants unless she has 1 million followers on Instagram, and at the beginning of the book she's at around 800,000. Her manager advises her to post some really cute relationship pictures because those get a lot of likes and followers since people tend to be very nosy. She ends up telling Christian about this one day, and he offers to help her out, so they pretend to be in a relationship. Stella has also had a stalker for a couple of years now, and he has finally done something that makes Stella freak out, and she asks for Christian's help since Christian literally owns a security company. Stella's stalker seems to have been inside her apartment, so Christian forces Stella to move into his penthouse, and he convinces her to do this by saying that they're supposed to be in a fake relationship anyway, so like why not move in? He also makes sure that Stella has the top security professionals at her service, and he accompanies Stella on all her brand trips and photo shoots, which was really fun to read about, and it actually made me want to travel more, which says a lot because I am definitely more of a homebody. Anyway, Christian tries to figure out the identity of Stella's stalker, and Stella has to deal with her disapproving family because they don't like the fact that she has decided to become a full-time fashion blogger, and in typical Twisted fashion, we get a ton of plot twists along the way. I rated this book 5 stars because I absolutely fell in love with Stella and Christian. Christian is not really like any other hero I've ever read about because he is very methodical and he anticipates conflicts and plans for them instead of acting irrationally. We kind of already know this about him from the other books because whenever someone has an issue, they usually turn to Christian because they know that he will come up with a foolproof plan that works. Also, Christian is definitely the best tech bro that I have ever read about. I wouldn't even call him a tech bro. He's just really good with technology and is not annoying about it. Stella was also incredible, and I love how she dealt with her toxic family. I also loved seeing the entire friend group back together, and I loved all of the banter between them in multiple scenes. The last few chapters in this book are about Ava and Alex's wedding, and they were the main characters in the first book. These last few chapters gave me so much joy, and overall, I just cannot recommend the Twisted series enough. After that, I read King of Wrath on Kindle Unlimited. This is the first book in the Kings of Sin series, which actually takes place in the same universe as the Twisted series, and I adored this because we got to see a lot of Christian and Stella again, and they're definitely my favorite Twisted characters. This book follows Vivian and Dante. Vivian is a jewelry heiress, and she is also an event planner, and Dante is a billionaire CEO of a luxury conglomerate. At the beginning of this book, Vivian's father blackmails Dante into entering an arranged marriage with Vivian, and Dante absolutely does not want to, but since he's being blackmailed, he agrees. Vivian doesn't know about the blackmail, and she thinks that her marriage is just a business transaction between her family and Dante's. Coming from a rich Asian family, she feels like this marriage is part of her duties as a good daughter, and she doesn't really push back against this too much. Dante seems to strongly dislike Vivian, and at the beginning of the book, he tries to avoid her as much as possible, which really pisses Vivian off because she wants to try to make the most of this marriage, especially since since she knows that they are going to have to be together for a long time, since divorce is not really an option to her. Meanwhile, Dante has enlisted Christian's help in getting rid of the blackmail material that Vivian's father is using against him, and once he does so, he is planning on breaking off his engagement to Vivian, which Vivian obviously does not know. Since he doesn't think their relationship is going to last, he has been avoiding Vivian so that he doesn't get too close to her, but obviously this plan fails and they fall for each other. This creates a huge conflict because so far Vivian has tried to be the perfect daughter to her father, but Dante is literally planning on destroying Vivian's father's life, and he knows that once he does so, he probably will not be able to keep Vivian in his life. I rated this book 4.75 stars, and I absolutely loved the high-end luxury atmosphere of this book. We get to see a lot of the bougie events that Vivian puts on, and we get to see shopping sprees and luxurious vacations. Vivian and Dante were also great together, but I didn't rate this book 5 stars because I just felt like Vivian was a lot more interesting to read about than Dante. Overall though, I'm really excited for the next book in the series, which is King of Pride, and that one is going to be about Kai and Isabella, who we met in this book, and I'm already obsessed with Kai, so I can't wait. If you liked the Twisted series, definitely start reading this series. Christian's cameos definitely make it even more incredible. Finally, I reread Dear Erin. I talked about this book in my September reading wrap-up video, which I will link in the description if you want to hear my thoughts on this book. This is one of my comfort books, so I'm really glad that I was able to reread it in November. Anyway, that is it for today's video. I'm reading some really amazing books in December, so definitely stay tuned for my next reading wrap-up video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.